Hello and welcome to the Testing Peers podcast. Tonight we are going to talk about one of my favourite subjects, the culture of quality. We have the Fab Four all here. We have David.
Hello.
Russell.
Hello.
Christopher.
Bonjour.
And Simon. Before we start though, we are delighted to be sponsored by Saffron QA. They are specialists in testing recruitment and provide a range of bespoke recruitment services to organisations across the whole of the UK. For more information, please seek their website, saffronqa.co.uk, or check out our show notes. Russell, I hear you have some good bants for us.
Well, I hope you guys have the bants, if I'm honest. It's a team effort. We're talking about sort of culture. To me, culture, I experience a lot of it when I go travelling. And lockdown has been somewhat restrictive of that in the last sort of 12 months or more. So I wanted to ask you guys of good memories. So I was thinking about, what was your most enjoyable holiday? Where did you go? What did you do? What made it special to you?
Well, mine was probably my honeymoon, where we went to the Seychelles and we learnt how to dive. So I dived into the oceans and saw turtles swimming in their natural environment. So that would be absolutely mine.
Mine would be my honeymoon too. In fact, we went to the same place 2 years running. We went to the Dominican Republic, to an island called Cayo Levantado, which is its own island, just the hotel on the island. So we have to get a boat from the mainland to the hotel. Yeah, 2 weeks bliss. You know, laying on the beach, rum and cokes being brought to you all day long. Horseback rides to a waterfall. Yeah, lush. And the people are amazing. The Dominican people are absolutely amazing. They can't do enough for you. They're really friendly, really, really good to spend time with. Yeah, no, really enjoyed it. Would love to go back, but can't see it happening. We did end with a hurricane though, just the last couple of days. Hurricane Irene hit the hotel and we were all locked up in the bar rather than in our rooms because it was the safest place. So we were given drinks. We ended up doing a Strictly Come Dancing competition, which me and Heather got into the final somehow, because I can't dance. I'm not sure how, but we got to the final.
The bar and the drinking might have helped.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, no, very, very enjoyable. And we actually went back the following year, took the in-laws back.
It wasn't your 1 year anniversary with your in-laws, was it?
It was more a case of, look where we went, we want to show you kind of thing. And took them back with us.
I've had nice picturesque holidays, but my favourite holiday, I have to be honest, was the one that we went to just before lockdown, when we went to Orlando, went to Universal Studios, went to Disney World. Magic for the kids, glorious weather, American portion of food, and everything was just, it was amazing. The kids have never been happier for an entire week without crying, and there was just so much to do. It was gloriously fun. And I think it was the fact that the whole family had some stuff to do with it. We all enjoyed it. It was in no way relaxing at all. On the flight home, there was so much tailwind. We landed in Gatwick an hour early. The airplane had a particular stench of vomit for various things, and the plane had nowhere to park when it got to the airport. So we had to sit on the tarmac, and no one could get out of the plane. And there's a lot of people not being very well. It wasn't a great ending, but it turns out that it was kind of like a good preparation for the pandemic. But the holiday was fantastic. It's not cultural. I learned very little of America apart from the portion sizes are fantastic, and also they advertise accounting and pharmaceuticals on TV that have cartoons for kids. So yeah,
Targeted marketing at its best there, yeah. One day they might need those things. For me, it's probably a local holiday. I went to Scotland and I did a driving holiday. So I took sort of a car, took a tent, took a friend, and we went and did a sort of distillery tours, which I think is very cultural for Scotland, and camping and walking. So, a cultural appropriation to the sort of Scottish Highlands. But I think it was the simplicity, the ease, the fact that you could throw the tent in the back of a car and just drive off there. It was also quite nice. The weather was very sunny, apart from the drive back where it poured with rain, which I think is also unusual for Scotland. But yeah, to me, that was kind of my most, and I embraced the Scottish culture quite heavily there, I think, especially with the whiskey.
I was going to say, going around the distilleries, you would embrace it quite well.
Yes, and the boot got slightly full of bottles.
So you're rattling around.
The second half, yes.
Cool. Well, that was a nice trip down memory lane. So, culture of quality then. Where should we start? Should we start by defining what we believe a culture of quality is?
Yeah, I think probably it is probably worthwhile to start with what we kind of see as a culture of quality, because it's a good phrase, but it can mean very much different things to different people. A lot of organizations talk about culture of quality, regardless of whether anywhere testing or anything is involved in it. It's the culture of kind of making sure the quality of the product is okay. And that's not just the testing, it's the customer service, it's the whole sort of customer experience. To us, though, I think, or to me within testing, it's in part about the customer experience, making sure the product is of a quality. I believe they're the people that matter in terms of deciding what is quality, what isn't quality. But it's also making sure that the mentality of quality is shared responsibility, that that's not just an expression. To me, it's about making sure that everyone is invested in that sort of quality outcome.
I would agree that once you've agreed what quality actually is, building is the key point of this is the culture. It's the fact that the whole company is driven to produce the best product it can. And as Russell said, it is built on the foundation. So it's from the very start. So it isn't just the tester's responsibility, it is everyone within the company. And it should be the CEO, all the officers, right down to the cleaners and the receptionists. It is representing what the company want to portray as their quality. And as long as they know what the quality is, then it's important. It's always difficult in my sort of line of work as a consultancy, because quality depends on what the clients want as much as anything. And I do agree also with Russell that perhaps slightly, again, like we discussed last time, quality means different things to different people. So that our sort of definition of quality as testers might be very different to the CEO of the company. So we need to make the culture of quality is the ethos of making sure that the product is as good as possible.
It's kind of two things in the sense we talked about defining quality and what that means, and that is very nuanced and that is very context specific. But so is the culture. Like the culture of an organization can be so vast and so different that regardless of whether people define quality as the same thing in different places, the people are different. The people are what make the culture. And it's whether you're remote, whether you're in person, whether you're all British, whether you're distributed, how you sort of define that. I don't know whether you might call it like I hate using the word DNA, but let's just use it because I just said it. Like having that common thread, that thing that sort of pieces you together is your business culture, your corporate culture, your company culture. You talked about if the managing director has a particular definition of quality and how that permeates through, but it's the leaders, the people who have got the voices, those are the ones that need to set an example in culture, and they will be the ones who sort of set the tempo for that.
I would agree. I think for me, it's all about having everyone that can visualize quality in the same way. It's finding a way that everyone can relate to. So whether that be the product that you're delivering, finding a way to show what good quality is and what we should aim for, or whether you have some other way of visualizing it. Chris, you've talked before about your gaming analogy and how that works with quality. That's a very good way of visualizing it. If you can set something up that everyone gets and everyone can see what we're driving towards, that makes it very, I won't say easy, that's the wrong word. That makes it simpler for everyone to be able to follow it and drive towards it.
Makes it accessible and relatable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's really about just finding ways to ensure that everyone has a voice whether it, as we said before, as David said, all levels of the company. And it's not just those high leaders in the high places, but it's the teams actually, can push back on things because they're not affecting the right quality in the right way. It's enabling everybody to have that voice, and then finding ways on how you reciprocate that through the rest of the company, and making sure quality is on the agenda when you're starting projects or starting a new piece of work or whatever. That quality is part of the discussion point. It's not all about cost and time. You are looking at all aspects of the projects.
I would also say, I think we've touched on it just then, is that it's the messaging from the officers at the top. It's being able to portray that message that culture is built in to everyone, whether they're within the company, within the the main side of the company, or they're distributed around. Everyone has to understand exactly how the company see quality or measure quality or whatever. And as long as that message is there, and I think that, Simon, you've just mentioned that sort of thing as well. Yeah, and it's making sure that, as you said, Simon, it's built in from the start. So the initial question is, how can we ensure that quality, we are producing a quality product? The other thing is that if people think that the quality is reduced, that there should be a mechanism of reporting back, which is not a sort of it's not a sharp stick to point, to tell people off. It needs to be a collaborative improvement program. I've worked in companies before where people have been chastised for what they consider to be improvements to a particular process or whatever. And that doesn't help with the culture of the company for a start, but it doesn't sort of drive forward quality either.
If you've got a quality culture, a culture of quality, feedback is something that's going to drive that culture. You've got to be open to feedback. You've got to lead the example. You've got to be receptive. You've got to encourage feedback. Mm-hmm. It is not always going to be things that everyone agrees with, but you've got to be accepting of that feedback. And it works both ways with feedback. You've got to be accepting the fact that it's not always going to be taken on and acted on. Sometimes feedback is just that. But it's there. People will listen to you with an open arms, with open eyes, with open ears. That builds credibility to what you're doing. It shows that you do care. And if you want a quality culture, you've got to care about opinions, viewpoints, different perspectives, because that's where the value is. And you're better as a collective than you are as a set of individuals.
No, I think ultimately, quality culture is inclusive of all of those things. It's not just having quality at the table, although quality at the table should absolutely be just there. It's also quality practices, quality communication, quality sort of tooling, quality listening, quality food if you're putting on events, like doing things well, things that make you proud, and the quality just being something that becomes you. And it's almost, people can look at the way you do things and just think that's quality. And that can be an organization that have teams that love working with each other. They're really happy with each other. They don't have to worry about someone picking up certain bits of work, or someone picking up the slack, or someone needing time off because they've got work-life balance. They care for each other, and that's a quality relationship they have in the workplace. That's not something that you can necessarily make super tangible, but it's because you breed that culture within your organization with your colleagues, and you get that quality culture. And I guess a quality culture isn't always organization wide. Sometimes it is just the people you work with, or the teams, or the space in which you move. And that can be an example to say, we can breed a quality culture. We can set an example. We've started small, but we can grow out potentially.
Because actually, that's a good example. Is, if you are starting out and you want to improve the quality of culture in your company, then start small. You don't need to go straight to the CEO. You can start off just improving it in your group, and if that then has an effect to improve something, then it will be seen or can be seen by other people. People will start talking about it, people start noticing, and then it can be organic and change and be an evolution rather than a revolution. I think it's vitally important to prove that it can work rather than trying to go up to the top and then the CEO or whatever going, go on then, show it. If you've already shown it, then it's a far easier process to then build it into the ethos of the company.
You don't get a quality culture by saying we will have a quality culture.
No, exactly.
That's not how you transform.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I created the model that I did. It's all about iterations. You start with one level of iteration. You get everyone engaged. You share that passion. You find your allies and you build on it, and you keep going until you build it out to more and more teams and more areas of the company. And that's, you have to start small. You have to start with just enough to make an impact. So whether that be one sprint team or however small you want to go, you start there, you get everyone engaged, you get everyone knowing that they're responsible for quality. It's not just down to the testers or however you've got the team split. And then you start changing the practices, you start changing the way it's talked about. You lose that finger pointing blame game of, well, the testers missed it or however that goes on. And you slowly see that shift. And then when you start seeing that shift, you can then start talking more about the shift is happening and get more teams engaged. You'll find that if it's working in one team, that everyone in that team will talk about it outside of their team, and then it kind of starts snowballing.
I think the key thing here is the fact that it's the individuals working together. The culture of quality, as we've said, isn't driven by words on a piece of paper or just one person. It is making sure that everyone has a consistent message and that everyone is involved and everyone feels as if they're part of that journey. And that can, as we've said, it can be just a small group. As long as everyone in that small group recognizes their position in improving that quality or in that culture of quality, then it can be driven forward.
It doesn't even have to be named a culture of quality or a quality culture. It can just be, let's just work well together. And it also doesn't have to be you that initiates these. You may see great things. And if you've got a voice in your company or any kind of influence at all, celebrate them, shout about them and go, hey, these people are doing great things. We should do that where we are. Or can I be a part of that? I want to learn from you. Because as well as I do that feedback internally is super important. If someone's doing something great, you should tell them, you should celebrate those people. That's, we're somewhere deep within us all, we've got egos and we appreciate being told that we're doing good things, right? And why wouldn't you want that? So why wouldn't you celebrate good things that are happening in your organization or with friends? Like, I don't work with you, but if I see you doing cool things, why wouldn't I celebrate that and say, I want to adopt those things? Can I be a part of the cool stuff you're doing?
I think that's a very valid point. We need to credit the good behaviors far more than we do the blaming for the bad behaviors or the criticizing, maybe is a better word. Because, it's often unnoticeable things, that small things that make a difference, people going the extra mile. And again, there are reward systems some places have for these things, nominating people for different things. I think that's not terrible systems, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. It is a thank you. It's a nice thing to be said. It's the little things frequently that will have much more lasting benefit than a nomination monthly or something like that. It's much more likely to build continuous culture by being continuously praising the good things. And we're all humans. We all have behavioral things, and if people give us praise, we react more towards it. It's nature.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and it's something that I try to push in my day-to-day as well. And I try and make sure that I praise somebody in my team every day for small things that they may have done, just to try and get that positivity vibe within the team, and then hopefully that spreads within the wider teams and just gets that good feeling, especially in the current climate as well, where things do feel a bit tough and people aren't getting that face time with people, and building a culture or growing a culture at this point when we're all virtual as well makes it doubly hard, because you're not being able to read body language as much. You're not able to have those conversations in hallways or overhear something and then go and sort of offer advice. based on a quality context or whatever it may be. So it does make it more difficult and more challenging to do, but celebrate the small wins and try and get people engaged and energized to want to do better things, to do things to improve the practices, and things will start to happen.
We talked about celebrating people, and we've talked about sort of iterations and feedback being important. But what other parts in your model are important for us, like in this small window of time that we've got now? Did you think is worth us dedicating some time on?
I think it's the relationships. So if we've got the team energized and you've got them praising each other and working well, it's how you find those allies outside of the immediate teams that can then say, well, this is great, we want to do this as well, like you mentioned before. It's that. So it's bridging those gaps, it's communicating with wider groups, it's sharing that, finding opportunities to share it, and it's really that probably links to things we've talked about before, like the communities of practice and that kind of thing, because it is intrinsically linked. If you have good practices and you have a good community within your business, then the culture does kind of grow within. So I guess it's how we plug those bits together.
I think one thing to remember is that within an organization, that people are individuals, and however much we try, there will be certain individuals that are not all showboaty and are getting behind everything. But that doesn't mean to say that we should ignore those people. They are dealing with it in their own way. They don't necessarily want all the accolades of coming up with good ideas and things like that. They may appreciate a thank you every so often. However, if they're not part of the driving force, that doesn't mean to say that we should, like I said, leave them behind. What we need to do is keep them informed of what we're doing each little step, because actually what can happen, and it has happened to me before, is that actually they really appreciate it and they can then feed back. It may not be in a group situation, they can feed back little things that they've noticed, and if they find that they do have a voice and that they can drive change, then that is really helpful, because often these quiet people that aren't all mouth often are sitting back and assessing what's happening and can often come up with the best ideas. So if you can tap into those ideas and get them to feed them back, then actually great things can happen.
And it's almost like all of our previous episodes are starting to combine here, because I'm feeling there's the empowerment, there's the passion, and it's kind of finding those people, like you say, the ones in the team that might be the quiet ones that usually don't have a voice. If you can tap into what makes them tick and you can give them the voice by empowering them and encouraging them and nurturing them to step up and say what they feel or what they've perceived to be happening or however it's working, you get those people voiced and talking, then you've pretty much got the whole team, because if they're the ones that don't usually say anything and now talking, inevitably the ones that talk more are already talking as well. So you're building that communication within the whole group.
People are different though. Like some people genuinely don't want to make things better, they just want to rock up. You have to accept that some people aren't going to want that. But also, I guess there are organizations that fundamentally make change difficult. They can make it hard, that you get put down from putting time and effort on something that isn't explicitly that thing you've been asked to do. Have we got any advice to people beyond get another job, that maybe they want to just try to start something? Maybe they can't, maybe they're not able to like create a culture of quality, maybe they're not able to do those things, but they want to still, they've got a drive to do something, and maybe they're not surrounded by that. Have we got any sort of advice for people in those sorts of situations? I'm sure we've probably come across some of those situations.
Well, I've lived one of those situations before, and it's exactly what kick-started my whole writing a talk about growing a culture, because it really does start with, you can be back against the wall, no chance of anything changing, really feel like everything you believe in is absolutely against what the company are doing, and you have to try and make those small steps. Start a conversation with somebody outside of your immediate sphere and talk about testing quality something that they wouldn't usually be familiar with. Find opportunities to talk about it. Find a team meeting. Find a group session where you can present for 5 minutes on what the testing team are doing, and just start to get that engagement. And it might take a while. It might take a few people here and there sort of acknowledging what you're doing and then asking you a question and building on that. You know, someone asked you a question, take that as an opportunity to share some information with them and build it up one person at a time.
I would also say use external resources where you can.
Absolutely.
Use everything you've got to your disposal. If you're not getting support from within the company, look for support outside and bring them in. Use blogs, use anything, YouTube videos, anything that talks from conferences. Use those as building blocks to show that what is possible, and make that change yourself. If you live by the culture that you want to be judged by, it doesn't necessarily matter what other people are doing, and you may not get the accolades or the thanks in the short term, but you will be living and working better because you're living what you believe in, and so therefore it will make your life better, and perhaps you can influence others while you're doing that.
It can be quite a dark place if you're in a company that, as Simon mentions, is kind of going against logic. And yeah, to David's point of going out there, looking at different things, do so. Be you. Don't lose faith in your own ideas. You've got to be sensible. You've got to be careful. Don't try and boil the ocean. Start, as we said, with small steps, but literally try. And it's hard sometimes. Your back's against the wall. You don't want to. Fight or flight comes into it often in these particular cases. Sometimes the right choice is flight. I'm not going to, even though Chris has geared us away from that option, it is sometimes an option. However, fighting, standing your ground, maybe, and assessing what can be done. Small victories. Is it just changing the way you look at live defects a little bit, so that actually it's less of a blame for testing mistakes to more, what could we do to prevent it? Just changing the conversation in one area might have a massive impact to how people feel about their day job, that they're not getting blamed. And that one lift from their shoulders, that weight off their shoulders, can have a significant impact to their everyday work, to other things, other actions. So don't worry about trying to solve it all. Do pick those things. And sometimes it is just about changing the language. It's not about bringing in newfangled toys, tricks, tools. It can just be changing the way in which things are referred to. It sounds small. Trust me, having been on the receiving end, hearing people being supportive versus accusational is a big, big win. And I think that's the sort of thing you can do often without massive investment. It's just talking to people. It's about explaining how things make people feel and discussing it. And you can often make small changes quite easily like that.
I would agree with the language. The way that people do say things can very much make or break a culture, and that blame culture is vitally important that we break it down. And in order to do that, is we can change our language to be much more positive. So rather than saying don't do that, you can suggest a positive way of doing something, and that certainly can change the attitudes of people that you're talking to.
It's a positive parenting thing, right? As well, like people talk about it, like that you don't always tell kids they're doing something wrong. Try and encourage them to do things better, find positive spins on these things, and sort of on that sort of note, I guess the advice that we've given in previous episodes is also find someone you can talk to these things about, or talk about these things too, because sometimes you've got things in your head, you've got frustrations. Maybe you don't have a manager you can talk to. Maybe you don't have a colleague you can talk to, but there are people in the testing community or even outside. Like, I think some of us have got friends who aren't testers. I'm not sure who those people are. People are relatable and they can understand frustrations, but friends are there to listen and offer advice if it's asked for, and actually sometimes just verbalizing those things that you've got going on in your heads, those frustrations, can help you to get through some of these tougher times. And the whole concept of rubber ducking is sometimes just talking about something means you may even reach your own conclusions yourself. But sometimes you might need a nudge in the right direction. Maybe somebody go, have you tried changing, doing a bit of a 90-degree turn just to sort of approach this in a different way, or just to reaffirm some of the things that you've said. So, whether you've got good ideas or bad ideas, find those people that are like-minded and share with them, share your ideas, talk to people about that. Don't go through these things alone. I don't think it's possible to build a culture alone, is it?
It's not a culture then, no.
No, exactly.
Yeah, the culture of me. That's definitely a thing in wrestling, right?
For me, when I first looked at this, my biggest challenge was engaging the team. The team were disengaged completely. It was just literally, they were treated as bums on seats. The more people we've got in the building, the more tests we can write, the more tests we can execute. There was no innovation, there was no nothing. And no one felt that it was a career they wanted to stay in. It was very much, this is just a job to pay the bills right now. So the first thing I tried to do was engage them. And I did that by reaching out to Rob Lambert and got him to come and do his 10 behaviors of effective testers talk. And that instantly lit a fire in some of the team that wanted to learn more. And that was the thing I need. That was the thing I needed. If I'd have done that presentation, and afterwards no one was engaged, it had no effect, then I would have probably felt like this is unworkable. I'm going to have to look elsewhere and find another way. But I was given enough of an in to then say, right, TestSphere. We're going to start doing TestSphere. Let's talk about testing. Let's just change some of the processes. Let's try and get us more involved. Let's talk about this more. Finding those small opportunities, getting people like Lee Rathbone to come and talk, to continue the energy, and just finding ways to talk to them and show that there is excitement here. It's not just the mundane. There are ways to innovate. There are ways to change things. Let's look at automation and finding those opportunities to change the narrative in the way the team are working, and the way the team want to work, and the way we want to move towards, and giving them a vision. So you've energized them, then say, okay, now what do we want to look towards? Where do we want to be? What do we want to do? How do we want to be perceived within the organization? And you start to, as long as you're not the one person that's directing, right, this is how we need to be, this is what we need to do, this is what we're going to achieve, but it's a collaborative, build from the ground up approach, then things will start to happen and things will start moving forward. But you're right, it's a challenge, but it's important to take one step at a time.
And unfortunately, I think our time is up for talking about cultural equality today. I hope that everyone listening is on their journey of cultural equality. And if you're not, then if you've been inspired to actually start, I hope we've been able to give you some ideas of how to actually start that journey and build up from yourself. If you are on that journey and you've got any sort of ideas or tips that we think we might have missed out, or just sharing your story with us, we'd love to actually hear them. Please contact us via the normal channels of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. Please look for Testing Peers on there. You can contact us by email. Contact us at testingpeers.com, and you could also support us by the patreon.com/testingpeers. And we have various tiers there, starting at £1 per month, to help us support our podcast. Also, thank you to Ben at Saffron QA for his continued support, and please look for his details on the website. So I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and we'll look forward to you coming back for the next episode.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.